Good morning, everyone. I hope you guys are having a great day. That said, I hope you enjoy these stories. And as always, I'd love to hear from you guys. If you have any narration stories that you want me to narrate in the future, please send them down where the link is. And if you guys do enjoy the video, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe, and enjoy. I can now talk about this freely. I figured I would share my story of the time I got kidnapped. This happened in 2021. I was 20 at the time, and I just gotten off work around 11 p.m., and I went straight home to get ready to go out and meet some friends at the strip club. He messaged me via Facebook Messenger to hang out and smoke, and I told him that I was meeting a friend and didn't want to hang out, so he offered to drive me and from the strip club well around 12:30 a.m. He came to pick me up, and he said he had to dump some garbage first. He had a couch in the back of the pickup truck bed, which I assume was the garbage he was talking about. He said that he made us margaritas, but I told him I didn't want to drink until I got to my destination. So we ended up just smoking marijuana on the way to dump the couch. It was about a 25 to 30 minute car ride to where he wanted to dump this couch, and by the time we made it to the destination, it was about 1:15 a.m. There was a logging road just off to the side of the highway that goes for miles. He pulled all the way down to the end and left the couch there, and then got back in his truck and started driving back towards the highway. But once we got halfway back to the highway, he then stopped and put his truck in park, then pulled out a pipe and started smoking more marijuana. After taking a hit, he turned his head to me and kind of just stared at me for a minute with a weird smirk on his face. Then all of a sudden, he almost looked like he wanted to jump at me, but had stopped himself in the moment with his hands, an emotion like he was about to grab me. I got scared at this point, and I was frozen in shock, not knowing if it was a joke or not. I quickly realized that it was not a joke, and I opened my door like I was about to get out, and he did the same. I closed my door, and then he closed his too. We ended up playing door attack, and eventually he got tired of it and got out of the truck. Then he ran to my side. He opened my door, and he tried pulling me out by my legs. As I was trying to kick him, I pulled my phone out to call the police. And of course, my Face ID didn't want to work in the moment, and he ended up snatching the phone right out of my hands. I kicked him hard enough in the chest, and he flew backwards, falling on his ass. I grabbed my purse and hopped out of the truck. I then started running towards the highway. I kept looking back just to see how far behind me he was, and he gave me a head start before running after me. He then grabbed me by the back of my shoulders, forcefully throwing me into the ditch. I landed on my stomach with one leg straight out with the other one bent at a weird angle. He then sat on top of my legs and butt and was holding my left hand behind my back. I then screamed and begged for him to bring me home, that I wouldn't tell anyone. He got upset that I was screaming, and he tried suffocating me with his other hand, all the while still holding my left hand behind my back. I kept trying to pull his hands off my face with my right hand because it got to the point where I couldn't breathe. Finally, he let go of my face, and I turned my head around to see what he was doing, and to my surprise, I watched him pull zip ties out of his front jean pocket. He zip tied my hands behind my back, and then tried forcefully pulling my panties off. I had a skirt, and I was still lying on my stomach. I remember digging my knees into the ground so he couldn't get them off. He didn't. He then got up and started pacing. Then he started saying it shouldn't have happened this way. Just do what I say, okay? I cried, telling him if he was going to do anything to me, then put me back in the truck. And he did. I'm not going to go into detail about this part of the story, but what I did notice was he pulled out a really small Ziploc baggie out of his jean pocket, and then pulled out a condom. They took the condom out of the actual wrapper it came in and put it in a really small Ziploc bag. If that makes any sense. I asked what it was for, and he then said it's for protection. After all that went down, he got back in the truck and he drove back to the highway and started driving around. Keep in mind I'm still tied up. I made every excuse I could get him to take them off me, and he wouldn't. I asked for a cigarette, which I don't even smoke. He then lit one, smoked on it a bit, then held it up to my mouth, saying I'll hold it for you at this point. I thought to myself, what can I do to get myself out of this situation? I really thought I was going to die. I then started saying things like, You can be my sugar daddy. I'll pay to take us out to dinner tomorrow. If pussy's all you wanted from me, you could have just said that. He loved it so much he started saying that he would put me off his life insurance policy so that when he dies, I can get the money. I eventually asked him again if he would just take off the zip ties. They were on so tight he was cutting my circulation. He pulled to the side of the road and he pulled out a mini pocket knife from the car keys, then cut them off. It took a few tries because of how tight they were, and he gave me my phone back. I had an Apple Watch on my wrist. I asked for him to give it to me. After he noticed it wasn't on my wrist anymore, and he had the surprised look in his face, then he said we need to go back and get it turned around and headed back to where all this just happened. I got so scared and thought to myself, yeah, this is it. I'm going to die here tonight, and nobody will know until somebody finds my dead body. Once we got there, he told me to stay in the truck, and he got out and searched the ditch for my watch. He came back to the truck after 5 minutes, but he said he couldn't find it, but that he'd be back there in the morning to look when it's light out. We got back on the highway and headed back to town. Once we got into town, he asked me what we would want to do. Can you please bring me to my mom's house? I have to work in 4 hours and I'm tired, and he actually brought me to my mom's house. Keep in mind it was 4:30 a.m. at this point. After getting to my mom's house, I had looked up his name on Google. He was actually on parole for first-degree murder. He had served 17 and a half years in prison for murdering somebody for their life insurance policy. I'm 22 years old now, and I'm so thankful I got to see another day. I was sued to testify against him, and he was found guilty November 6, 2023, of all charges. As of now, he hasn't been sentenced yet. This was one of the most terrifying and traumatizing things that ever went through. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. While this isn't the most scariest story, I was completely terrified. For some context, this happened in 2012. I'm a very petite lady standing at 5'2", and I was about 90 or so pounds. It was during the summer, and I had just turned 13 some months before. I had nothing to do, so I decided to go to my grandma's. She lived about 3 miles away, and we had recently moved to her house. So I told my brothers where I was headed, and I was off. I didn't have a phone or iPad, so I just listened to the sounds of the city. About halfway, I was coming up on an intersection. As I was about to cross, I saw a white van pulling over next to the crosswalk, about 3 feet away from me. The soldier guy, who had to be in his 30s or 40s with a thick accent that I still can't place, had leaned over and asked, "Hey there, do you need a ride?" I, being my conscious self, stopped in my steps and then said, "No thank you, I'm okay." The man then asked, "Are you sure? It's not a big deal. I can give you a ride, wherever you're going." I once again said no thanks, and he asked me again, slightly aggravated with my answer. "Come on, I'll give you a ride," and again I said no thank you. "I'll wait too," which he finally replied with, "Well, okay then," and he gave me a slightly creepy smile. Then he let me cross the street, and he turned down the street and then took a left down the next one. I looked at him turning down the street as I was finished crossing. I got really nervous, but I couldn't let him notice. So once he was gone, I started the jog to the next intersection. I told myself I'd fight if I had to. When I got to it, I saw him in his van, about to go through the stop sign. It was as if he had just waited at the stop sign, waiting to see me again. I looked at him, and I walked fairly fast through that intersection. He gave me a little smile and then slightly waved at me. He went straight through the stop sign, following on the street parallel to the very busy one that I was walking down. I again jogged to the next intersection, and there he was, yet again. He gave me a small smile and a slight wave. His smile was off-putting. It was like he was thinking of what he wanted to do to me once again. After crossing, he went straight, and I jogged to the next intersection, making sure that he didn't see me jogging this time. Instead of going straight, he turned left, right towards me. He smiled, and he then said something to which I can't even remember. But he gave me this look. It was like he was mad, but not because he didn't get me to come in. But then now he had to find someone else to get into his van, so he could just do God knows what. He then turned right, and I crossed the street. I saw him go straight, so I jogged to the next street and turned right, passing by my old elementary school. I took the longer way to my grandma's with more turns. When I finally got there, She could actually see the worry and fear on my face, and asked me what was wrong. I told her, and when it was time to go, she actually drove me home this time. I told my mom as well, and my grandma, talked to her about it too after, that she didn't let me go anywhere by myself, and the next time I wanted to go to my grandma's, 4 of my brothers walked with me along, with my older brother's friend, who also lived with us. I never did see that creepy man or his van ever again. I also never heard of a girl getting kidnapped in that area. I always hoped that he never gave someone else a ride. I often feel guilty that we didn't report it though, even though I got a good look at him multiple times. I never remembered his face, just his voice, that gruff of tone voice he tried to sound kind and helpful, but you could tell that he wanted to be mean, to yell at me, and to get me to do God only knows what. Thank God he didn't succeed. Scoring a cherry red 1967 Mustang convertible on Craigslist for just $5,800 felt too good to be true. The gleaming pony car just needed some tender loving care. According to the listing, after sitting idle in a long-term storage, as a wanted grease monkey with more time than money, I took the bait, and drove 2 hours to meet the seller at a 7-Eleven parking lot. Pulling up next to the gleaming crimson classic, idling under the fluorescent glow, my inner skeptic remained deafened by rumbling V8 music. The car radiated kinetic energy like a wild bronco waiting to bolt inside. I found worn leather seats, polished wood grain dash, showing slight cracks, and a fading paper dealer sticker still clinging to the passenger window. As artifacts of buy-in errors, the odometer read 888,246. Riley, you sure this type who could handle 400 horses under that good kid? His sharp questions held no trace of doubt. I could easily cough out that asking price, attired in threadbare jeans with auto oil stains. I likely resembled an aimless tire kicker rather than a qualified buyer. But after a brief test drive where the Mustang hugged curves like a dream, I peeled off crisp bills that depleted my savings, but secured the title that first night as I proudly parked my flashing new toy in the driveway. The way the dots flickered about, sinking so much cash into an old fixer-upper, the peeling clear coat suddenly signifying countless potential issues hiding beneath the sleek exterior. But visions of tuner magazines featuring my custom restoration calmed those fears. I had plucked a forgotten gem from a gloomy oblivion in that 7-Eleven parking lot at dawn. I eagerly slid behind the war reel, ready to cruise into work, blaring classic rock, and turning the key spawned only lifeless clicks after 20 futile attempts. I popped the hood to troubleshoot before resorting to banging my head against the non-functioning steering wheel. 2 fruitless hours later, I had hearing a coworker for a humiliating ride instead of rolling up in my so-called hot rod. Further inspection revealed the starter itself turned fine, but spun without engaging the engine. I cleared my schedule that night after work to really get elbow deep sorting through problems. Only then, crawling under the Mustang, did I notice the license plate seemed oddly crisp compared to the weathered surfaces around it. Stamped with vintage 60s graphics and chrome screws, securing the corners closer, scrutiny showed several inconsistencies between materials and typeface formats of various digits and letters. Tunes started creeping up on my spine as I slid back out and randomly checked to bin plates around the interior. The numbers engraved on the dashboard partition failed to match those printed onto the door sticker, which also varied ever so slightly from the title documentation. In my glove box, someone had gone to elaborate lengths to disguise this car's true origins, and likely issues instead of a charmingly preserved relic I grossly overpaid for. A convincing deception furious, I scrambled, gathering every shred of communication from Kurt the seller, who had insisted we only correspond via temporary texting apps and cash payment. No paper trail led back to whoever unloaded this false beauty. Rather than the authentic Mustang of my dreams, the glow of sunset suddenly felt ominous, rather than picturesque, spilling across my stranded ride's glossy hood. What else didn't I know about the vehicle's past and murky identity? I spent another 14 hours scouring forums, seeking advice, and hunting court records about previous attempts toward legal action. Plenty of similar antidotes existed, yet few offered happy resolutions. Fighting internet fosters often proved resource-intensive with minimal payout, and the alarming gaps in tracing the particular vehicle history signaled that driver deeper might surface uglier truth. Had I aided and abetted unwittingly participating in the auto theft forgery, chop supply chain, my head throbbed with staring at a blurry screen until sunlight started creeping into the living room. With frustration and resignation, I shuffled back outside to stare numbly at the biggest beauty crowded my driveway, unable to revisit the upwelling joy I had originally felt behind the wheel. Now the symbol of personal promise tasted like bitter betrayal of my own blindness, but determination hardened my heart against surrendering complete defeat. I might be stuck for the moment with this lemon, but I would slowly peel back its secrets no matter what rot lived beneath. This shiny skin I had so foolishly coveted from a calculated hustler. I invested in a bottle of cheap whiskey and set to removing every body panel methodically that Saturday, tensing for contraband or corpses to come cascading out. Like a morbid pinata, all I found instead was amateur patches hiding shot repairs and structural rust bubbles. Worse cosmetic damage than represented for sure, but not the level of pure evil my creeping paranoia imagined. No scratch in the glossy paint could fully conceal the painful lesson I had bought regarding assumed integrity through having reached bare metal carcass with only my foolish reflection glaring back. I nearly grabbed a sledgehammer to pulverize the haunting reminder mocking me from my driveway, but ultimately financial realities rule against destroying my expensive psychological anchor, holding me tethered to past potentialities before charting some alternative course. Correcting my circuitous route forward Monday morning, instead witnessed the Mustang chugging down streets towards my part-time auto mechanic gig, rather than the glamorous image in my original rear-view fantasies. As I rolled up next to the logo truck in front of Joe's house of pot rods, my phone dinged a new message notification. The temporary number I didn't recognize, but the words struck instant recognition. Saw you cruising the staying pretty chill ride. Got any others to unload? LOL, hands trembling in rage. I take back my vow with a scammer that one day we would meet again, face to face, under far less fortuitous circumstances for him, rather than me once more eating bitter dust, lingering in this dirty wake. I won't be as trusting next time. To give some background information, I run a pod simply for fun, or to bring awareness to the dangers of the world and people around us. But learning about weird occurrences and true crime has made me more weary of people and behavior. I'm usually really good at chopping occurrences as just people being people, but I do work in an area known for sketchy behavior, drugs, abductions, and stuff like that. That being said, this happened while I was working the store alone. We have cameras, and I'm a fairly big person. I'm 6 feet and a heavyweight athlete. I'm female, though you couldn't really see that due to the amount of layers I was wearing. Around 12, my friend, we will call them A, came to keep my company and sat behind a trash can we have in the corner of the store next to a heater. A man pulls up in a black Lexus and is making wide eye contact with me the entire time, which kind of made me uncomfortable, but with my size and appearance, I'm used to men gawking at me. He kept up this staring for a couple of minutes, and then the short man slinked out of his car. I say, "Welcome in," which was met with him starting to swiftly walk around and behind the counter where I work. I was cutting an avocado for my lunch, and I had a knife in my hand. Got a very strange feeling and told him sternly, "If you need anything, I can help you over there. You cannot be back here." I looked up and coughed. The man whipped around, looking at A, and briefly said, "I don't need anything," and speed walks out, which left me and A with a terrible feeling. So A eventually leaves, and I sit down and study on my break, where we are pretty dead for at least the next hour usually. These 3 teens around my age, probably a year younger, come in. The one that started to talk to me was visibly sweating and shaking with nerves, which was strange because it was freezing outside. Like you could throw water and it would turn to ice cold. Thinking nothing of it, I asked what I could get them. He blurts out, "Can you give me an Uber?" I said, "I can order you one," which was met with, "No, I have cash. Can you give me an Uber home?" And I said, "No, I can't leave the store." And I was absolutely not going to be driving strangers to God knows where. And he points at a phone and a charger his friend was holding. And I said, "There's an outlet over there they can use." He went to plug it in by my computer, which I said, "Hey man, use the one over." He walked all the way to the back to get right next to my stuff, which was a little weird, but whatever. The girl with the two guys pipes up as soon as they sat down. "No, you can't say that. You're weird. You're gonna weird her out," while the other guy said, "Just go ask her," then continued to whisper something about their plans. And you know, I'm always happy to help, but I started feeling uneasy. Then they stand up. I'm not kidding, like 5 minutes after they sat down. Just get up and leave and say, "Bye, thanks for the help." And the main guy pulls keys out of his pockets and continues to get into the car that's been parked in front of my store the entire time. Also very uncomfortable feeling. Luckily my manager came in shortly afterwards. It was all fairly strange. Thank you all for listening. I'm trying to get more stories, but I'm running a little low. If you guys do have stories you want me to read, please leave them in the description by my email. And with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed. And as always, stay